Under the soft light of the Wasatch Mountains, a wooden gate opens to the quiet world Robert Redford built. Not just a home, but a legacy carved into the wild heart of Utah. Here in the folds of pine and snow, the Hollywood legend traded red carpets for mountain trails and scripts for stillness. This is Sundance, his masterpiece beyond film, where art, nature, and solitude became one. Today, we take a final walk through the retreat that defined his spirit, his vision, and the life he left behind. Some lives begin quietly, but grow into legends. Robert Redford's story is one of them, shaped by loss, wanderlust, and a restless search for meaning. He was born in Santa Monica in 1936, under a bright California sky that always seemed too wide for the small apartment his family lived in. His mother, Martha, was gentle and endlessly encouraging. His father, Charles, worked long hours as an accountant, carrying the quiet weight of the Depression years. When his mother died after a complicated pregnancy, Robert was only 18. That loss, sudden and unhealed, became a shadow that followed him, shaping the silence in his eyes, the depth behind his smile, and the quiet ache that would later define so many of his roles. He grew up in Van Nuys, restless and rebellious, a boy who never liked rules or classrooms. He was quick, athletic, and charming, but easily lost. Baseball gave him a brief direction, a scholarship to the University of Colorado, until drinking and wandering took it away. That failure sent him on a journey far from home. He crossed Europe alone, painting on streets, sleeping in small rooms, and learning that the world was wider and more unpredictable than he had imagined. In Paris, he found beauty. In Florence, solitude. In London, a sense of purpose. When he returned to America, he traded brushes for scripts. At the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York, he discovered acting, not as performance, but as truth. It was there he met Lola Van Wagenen, who became his wife, his companion, and the person who grounded him when success began to pull him upward. Broadway came first. Barefoot in the Park made him a name. Then television followed, and film after that. He had the look that people noticed, but it was the quiet undercurrent, the sense that he'd lived more than he said, that made audiences stay. By the late 1960s, Hollywood had found its new kind of hero, thoughtful, vulnerable, and real. In 1969, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid changed everything. Redford's partnership with Paul Newman was effortless, two men connected by wit, intelligence, and an unspoken sense of decency. The film's warmth and humor carried him into the heart of American cinema. What followed, The Sting, The Way We Were, All the President's Men, made him not only a star, but a storyteller of his generation. He was no longer playing heroes, he was defining them. Yet even as the lights burned brighter, Redford looked elsewhere, to the mountains of Utah, to the open spaces that felt honest in a way Hollywood never could. He bought a small piece of land near Mount Timpanogos, a quiet retreat that would one day become Sundance. It was not built for glamour but for reflection, a place to protect the land and nurture new voices in art. Out of that place grew an idea, a home for filmmakers who wanted to tell stories without compromise. In 1981, he founded the Sundance Institute, and from it came a generation of directors and writers who redefined what independent cinema could be. Through them, Redford's influence became less about his own films and more about what he helped others create. He directed Ordinary People in 1980, a film of grief and quiet healing, and it became one of his most personal works. It spoke to everything he understood about loss, forgiveness, and the spaces between people. And as time moved forward, Robert Redford became more than an actor. He became a craftsman of silence and meaning, a man who turned every setback into a kind of poetry. His story, once shaped by loss and wandering, settled into legacy. That legacy lives not just on screen, but in the quiet corners of his world. Let's step inside Robert Redford's Sundance Mountain Retreat, a home that mirrors the man himself, humble, enduring, and profoundly connected to nature. Sundance Mountain Retreat. Hidden beneath the snow-draped peaks of Mount Timpanogos, Robert Redford's Sundance Mountain Retreat was more than a home. It was a philosophy made visible. Built from stone, timber, and glass that seemed to grow from the canyon itself, the retreat reflected Redford's lifelong belief that beauty should coexist with responsibility. He first discovered this landscape in the 1950s, when he was a young man riding his motorcycle from California to Colorado. The place lingered in his mind for years, a valley of whispering pines, wild rivers, and open silence that felt sacred long before he could afford to claim any of it. By 1961, with little money and a young family, he bought his first 2 acres here for only $500. From that seed, Sundance was born, slowly, carefully, with each decision rooted in preservation rather than profit. Redford designed his cabin himself, stacking logs with his own hands, shaping the stone hearth, and orienting every window toward the changing light of the mountains. "I wanted to develop very little and preserve a lot," he once said. A promise he would keep for more than half a century. The home that grew from that philosophy became a solar-powered sanctuary surrounded by evergreens. Inside, sunlight spilled through wide glass walls onto slate floors and handmade Navajo rugs. Every room revolved around 4 elements: fire, art, light, and view. The living area opened to a sweeping vista of the canyon, while a circular music room, inspired by the sacred kivas of the Pueblo people, offered deep, padded walls where conversation replaced echo. In a small stone tower, Redford built his private study, a monk-like thinking room, deliberately cut off from telephones and distractions. It was here, above the quiet snow, that many of his ideas for Sundance Institute and the festival were first born. Throughout the retreat, Redford displayed more than 600 works of Native American art: pottery from the Anasazi era, kachina dolls, ceremonial blankets, and modern paintings by indigenous artists he befriended. These pieces weren't trophies, but companions. "My house is not a museum for the art," he said. "It's an environment for it." A clay bowl from the 12th century might rest beside his Oscar for ordinary people, while a Hopi carving might share a shelf with a child's drawing from one of his workshops. It was a deliberate mix, a dialogue between heritage and modernity, between sacred craft and human achievement. Outside, the air carried the scent of cedar and snow. Deer and moose crossed the property freely. Hawks circled above the frozen river. Each season brought a new color palette: gold aspens, silver frost, green meadow bloom. And Redford, ever the artist, treated them as living brushstrokes. For him, this land wasn't owned. It was entrusted. "I'm a caretaker, not a possessor," he said, echoing the spiritual humility that defined both his environmental activism and his artistry. By the 1980s, Sundance had expanded into a cultural ecosystem, a mountain community where artists, filmmakers, and thinkers gathered to create without fear of failure. Yet the heart of it all remained Redford's retreat, a living, breathing example of how architecture, ecology, and art could merge into one vision. Even after selling the resort in 2020 to ensure its preservation, he never truly left it. He passed away there, in the morning quiet of the Utah mountains, surrounded by the people and the place he loved most, the land that had mirrored his spirit from the very beginning. Robert Redford's Sundance Mountain Retreat stands today as a monument not to wealth or fame, but to purpose, proof that the truest luxury lies in harmony between art and earth, and that a man's greatest masterpiece can sometimes be the world he leaves behind. What do you think about his mountain retreat? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let's explore the unique cars he once owned. Car collection. The deep blue Aston Martin Rapide was one of his favorite cars. Elegant, classic, and unmistakably British. He first drove it through the streets of London during the Sundance London Film and Music Festival. The 6.0-liter V12 engine gave a smooth, powerful sound that made every turn feel effortless. With 470 horsepower and a top speed of 188 miles per hour, it combined strength with calm precision. Sitting on the tan leather chair, with the smell of rain still lingering in the air, it was a moment of freedom and tranquility for him. Years earlier, in a silver Mercedes-Benz SL-Class convertible, he had found another kind of freedom. The evening was dressed in tuxedos and city lights. Beside him sat his companion, laughter cutting through the noise of traffic. The car itself was sleek and graceful, with soft leather seats and a roof that folded away to let the night sky in. With a starting price of approximately $115,000, for Redford, the car is not just a means of transportation, but also a companion. It gives him a sense of peace after long days in the lights and noise of Hollywood. And then there was the black Mercedes Maybach S-Class, his quiet retreat in the heart of Paris. Its exterior shimmered under the morning light as he stepped out in his leather jacket, calm, unhurried, entirely himself. Inside, the cabin was a world of handcrafted wood and whisper-quiet comfort, powered by a 6.0-liter twin-turbocharged V12 engine pushing 621 horsepower. The car is valued at around $240,000, a worthy symbol of his elegance and success. Behind these cars lies more than a love for engines or craftsmanship. They are fragments of Robert Redford's journey, symbols of independence and quiet reflection. And just as these cars reflect his refined taste and enduring legacy, so too does the fortune he built. A wealth built not just by cinema, but by vision, time, and effort. Income and net worth. It began with a check for only $500. His first film role in War Hunt in 1962. No glamour, no red carpet, just a young man with a quiet determination, a rented apartment, and the hope that one day the stories he told would matter. That humble sum was the seed of a fortune that would later stretch across film sets, mountain ranges, and generations of storytellers. By 1968, everything changed. For Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Robert Redford earned $750,000, the same as about $7 million today. He didn't spend it on luxury, he spent it on land. Every after-tax dollar went into buying 3,000 acres beneath Mount Timpanogos, Utah, a patch of wilderness he refused to let developers touch. That place became Sundance, both his sanctuary and his empire. From that decision, an entire cultural movement was born. The Sundance Institute, the festival, the channel, even a retail catalog later sold for $40 million. Through the 1970s, his paychecks grew in rhythm with his fame. $500,000 for The Sting, 1973. $2 million for A Bridge Too Far, 1977. $3,500,000 for The Electric Horseman, 1979. Each role was a chapter: the charming grifter, the soldier, the quiet cowboy. And each brought not just money, but freedom. Freedom to direct Ordinary People in 1980, the film that earned him an Academy Award and redefined him as a storyteller who valued humanity over spectacle. In the 1990s, Redford became one of Hollywood's most respected elder statesmen. He earned $4 million for Indecent Proposal in 1993, then a career-high $11 million for The Last Castle in 1993, 2001, equivalent to roughly $20 million today. Yet he never seemed to chase wealth. His real investments were quieter: 2,600 acres of Utah forest, a ranch called Horse Whisperer near Sundance, and a 10-acre vineyard estate in St. Helena, California. Every property carried his signature: sustainable design, natural materials, a respect for the landscape. Beyond film, the Sundance brand became a financial pillar. The annual festival drew global attention, Sundance Productions sold films and series, and his nonprofit institute launched the careers of new directors who would carry the flame forward. By the time he sold the Sundance Resort to private investors in 2020, Redford had already woven its values into the fabric of American cinema. When he passed away in 2025 at age 89, his estimated net worth stood near $200 million. But the number only tells part of the story. His true wealth was not built on contracts or commissions, but on choices. The decision to protect a mountain, to nurture artists, and to live surrounded by the land that shaped his soul. Each dollar he earned had purpose, each investment a reflection of a man who believed that success, when guided by integrity, could outlast any era of Hollywood. Behind that quiet fortune was conviction, that money should serve purpose, not ego. For Robert Redford, wealth was a tool to protect nature, support artists, and give back to the world that shaped him. Philanthropy. In 2005, he and his son James Redford founded the Redford Center, a nonprofit that funds films focused on environmental impact. He believed cinema could change consciousness, that a truthful story could reach deeper than any speech. Since its founding, the Redford Center has awarded over $2 million to 60 documentary projects tackling climate change and environmental justice around the world. One project, a $25,000 grant, went to a group of indigenous women in the Amazon who wanted to film their fight to save their forest from logging. When the documentary premiered, their voices reached global audiences, attracting aid and reforestation support. Beyond storytelling, Redford spent more than 3 decades as a devoted member of the Natural Resources Defense Council, one of America's leading environmental organizations. He helped advocate for the protection of millions of acres of wilderness, including the 1.7 million-acre Grand Staircase Escalante region, securing it from industrial development. At the same time, Redford used the Sundance Institute as a cultural force, a place where young artists could learn to tell their own stories and bring unheard voices to light. Over more than 40 years, the Institute has supported thousands of filmmakers, screenwriters, and storytellers worldwide. For Redford, this process was a form of philanthropy, not of money, but of faith. He believes that art is fire, and young artists need someone to help them keep it burning in a world that's slowly forgetting the truth. For Robert Redford, giving was never about wealth. It was about purpose. Every story he nurtured and every forest he saved reflected his belief that art and empathy could heal the world. And beyond the causes, there was the man himself, living quietly among the mountains and finding peace in the simple rhythm of home and family. Personal life. In his later years, Robert Redford lived quietly in the mountains of Utah, surrounded by pine trees and the hum of wind that he always said felt like music. Each morning began slowly, a cup of black coffee in his hand, Sibyl beside him, both watching the first light stretch over the peaks. They painted together in the studio near the main house, her brush strokes filled with color and spirit, his words often shaping into sketches or letters that he never published. It was a rhythm of calm and creation, far removed from the noise of Hollywood. Family remained the heart of his days. His daughters, Shauna and Amy, visited often with their children, filling the house with laughter and long dinners around the wooden table. Redford loved cooking simple meals, grilled trout, vegetables from his garden, and telling stories about the early days of Sundance to his grandchildren, who listened like it was folklore. The family bond, after so many years of loss and distance, became his truest source of peace. He no longer traveled far, but the spirit of exploration never left him. When he did leave Utah, it was usually to visit New Mexico or Northern California, where old friends and artists lived. He enjoyed quiet walks through Santa Fe's galleries or sitting under a tree sketching mountain lines. Those moments kept him grounded, reminders that art and nature were always one for him. Even in his late 80s, he stayed active. He hiked short trails around Sundance every afternoon, sometimes stopping to watch the deer grazing near the creek. Locals often saw him at the small cafe by the resort, chatting with guests who barely realized they were talking to one of Hollywood's greats. He was always modest, quick to smile, and happier listening than talking about himself. At home, evenings were peaceful. A fire burned in the stone fireplace. Sabile's paintings glowed under soft light, and old jazz records played in the background. He often said he didn't miss fame or crowds, just the work of creating something meaningful. That was the life he built in the end. Quiet, honest, surrounded by art, family, and the wild land that had always been his sanctuary. It was a fitting final chapter for a man who spent his life chasing truth through art, a legend who found his peace not on the screen, but in the whisper of trees and the laughter of family. His story reminds us that greatness isn't measured by applause, but by the quiet grace of how one chooses to live. If Robert Redford's life inspired you, like this video and subscribe for more stories of Hollywood legends who live with heart and purpose. Tell us in the comments, what part of his quiet world moved you most?